Okay. Let me see something. Okay, so hopefully you guys can hear me through this headset. I ain't got my normal one on, but something I will touch on, if you will, something that I talked about in the, union jobs, how they don't take care of their workers, and when it comes to trying to press lawsuits because you were done wrong as a worker. And not only done wrong as a worker, but now when it comes to health, why a lot of health cases now get thrown out for very messed up reasons. And in order for something to go through, a loved one has to be deceased, which makes it that much more difficult, because if a loved one is deceased throughout a company that's been producing products and killing people, it makes it that much harder for that person who has passed away to speak for themselves, So then they got to have somebody that has to talk for them, which is very sad in that type of case. So let's start with accidents, deaths at jobs as well. When I was working at the TRC plant, that stood for Tennessee Rehab Rehabilitation Center, you have to ask yourself, what is the first line that comes to mind in that sentence, right? Rehab. There's different forms of rehab out there. A lot of people don't know about. There's psychiatry, which is therapy rehab, physical rehab, drug rehab, and rehabilitation, which goes in trying to get you back in society if you have been locked up doing football numbers in prison. So there's that. Now, yes, it's no secret that I used to work at a place like that with people who were on drugs. It's no secret that drugs used to rule my life once upon a time. Accidents can cause like that, and I always said, especially in the video, about union jobs not caring for the workers and exposing a lot, is that union jobs such as your factory jobs, your plant jobs, your warehousing jobs, your loading dock jobs, they don't care less if you come to work high off pills, weed, any type of drug, or liquored up, as long as you're there to work. Accidents right there that even can cause death from accidents at a work site. You got two people that are held responsible. The person that came to work like that, and the company itself for not testing like they should. So if you get hurt on a job, right, if you come to work messed up, yes, you are at the age where you should know better now, but at the same time, it's also that job's responsibility. In a lot of places that have that little word talking about, we're not responsible for anything that happens to you at our place of business. They think that saves them from going to court or saves them from lawsuits. Sadly, that little line doesn't mean much of anything. It doesn't mean much. So the job gets held accountable, or the place of business, regardless. So you try going for a lawsuit, right? Now, in this case, the problem is with a lot of things, and especially today's day and age of people, is that, you gotta have a You gotta have some type of proof, evidence, statements, witnesses. Okay, you got statements, you have witnesses. Cool. What about security footage? You know what I'm saying? Most of the time, these places at work are not gonna have security footage. They're just not gonna have it. So what do you do, right? Okay, you got intoxication reports. That's gonna make you look bad. You got your injury report. Okay, that plays somewhat in your favor. But then the place of business is going to have people intimidate, so they'll take the place of work. Now, because of that, yes, your case is going to get thrown out. You're probably going to lose your job. Okay, because of that, there's going to be some times where you're not going to be provided medical treatment. You'll be provided a little bit, which can cause complications. With those complications, with you trying to heal up properly, you're not going to heal up properly. So, what do? Well, you could try to sue for medical, try to sue the people that are trying to help you so you can get help, but they're going to take a look back at your previous case and be like, well, the reason why we're not going to help you fully is because of this, which is a dumb reason, but because of that, you know, it falls short. So let's say if there's a death at work, right? Let's say if there's a death at work. You know, these jobs, when there's a death at work, they do get away with that, unfortunately, especially when things are reported where something has to be fixed or replaced. You know, GM last year or so had a death at one of the main factory companies. Had a death. And you would think that they would have been held accountable and responsible for that death. Well, sadly, they weren't, and the family ended up losing the case, and they had a hard time trying to pay for this person's, you know, service of burial. Just like the place where I used to work at, again, you know, there was a woman that had seizures. She was epilepsy. She ended up getting brain damage, unfortunately, because they decided, you know, I mean, I get it, you're not supposed to touch the person at all, but in most cases, you are supposed to help them regardless. You're supposed to protect their head, you know. I understand our head is our strongest bone in our body, and it's supposed to protect our brain, but when you add a lot of speed with a lot of force, you know, that brain hits up against that skull really hard, turns to mush, especially when you're hitting a hard surface that's going to cause the skull to crack. And the job was never held accountable at all, and they just let her hit her head, not bothering to put nothing underneath her like they should have on the hard concrete floor, and then putting her on a hard metal table. When it happened again, you know, it didn't help nothing, because now she's hitting her head on another hard surface. You know, it does. You know, I bring this up because there's been accidents at work underneath the small GM plants, especially that my mother used to work, and you would think that they would be held accountable for a lot of their stuff, but they're not. You know, they allow so many of their workers to come to work high and messed up. You know, they only do drug tests when you get hired in to get the job, but other than that, you know, they don't care. Just like with medical right now, when we get onto the medical discussion part of this, I understand me and my father never had the best relationship, but I feel like the doctors should have actually done their job, because what we thought was a mass was a tumor ended up spreading into being cancer, and they didn't bother to do their job. So he's laying there for like a week after surgery with stitches in him and stuff, not bothering to help him because they're too afraid. And with it now spread it to cancer, what ended up causing that to happen was the company that produces, develops, and makes insulin needles for diabetics. Now, I'm type 2 diabetic, but I'm not on insulin shots. The closest thing to insulin that I've been on was breathing treatments that my body at a young age had a hard time trying to adapt to and take, but I still had to do it. Now, because it was like a reverse, kind of like a cycle, like you breathe in, you breathe out, so a lot of it comes out from the nostrils of the breathing mask. So, because I wasn't on that thing for like years on end, I consider myself safe. But, when they ran tests and everything, what caused that tumor and cancer to really develop, was insulin needles. And he's been on insulin shots for 20-something years and some change. So, it does take a while for that to develop, but there's been so many people who are diabetic that they find out, after they've been like on insulin shots for like 20-something, 30-something years, it comes into cancer, and they try to get a lawyer to try to sue the company, because the company that makes the insulin needles has a history of people dying on their off their products, off the insulin. Thing is, when they're alive, they the case gets thrown out because the person is alive, which what I'm about to get into with this one, which I can't find the words to describe it, but it's sickening, because you mean to tell me that with all the evidence of using insulin shots for 20, 30-something years, when you have a history of people dying from their products, getting diagnosed with cancer from their products for years, going to the doctor, having a lot of medical proof, right? The courts and the lawyers won't take it because, and this is the reason why. The reason why they won't take it is because the victim has not been deceased yet. So you mean to tell me a person has to be deceased in order for a case like this to get took? That right there on its own is just disgusting, because my brother-in-law, his mother was diabetic, and she worked at a factory job as well, and you can even say, before I get into that one, you can even say that my father's job is also held accountable, because they work with chemicals all day. They work with chemicals all day, and they have to wear a special suit. Do I believe chemicals played a role in that? Yeah, absolutely. I strongly believe that they played a role in that. That might be a bit difficult to prove, but I believe there's something there that, if he were want to sue his job, it may fall through, it may not. But again, like I said in one of the videos, union jobs for wrongfully things that are done to their workers. But like I said, my brother-in-law's mother, she was diabetic for years, and she was on insulin shots, and it ended up developing into tumors, cancer, and she did pass away after, living with that for years, trying to be there for her family. But, she did unfortunately pass away in 2014 on Valentine's Day. And then by the time of her death, the company settled out outside of court for some pocket money, right? Because the company has power and lawyers like that, and they're going to come up with a number that is going to be considered pocket change. And I guess there's a history of this company that develops insulin shots doing that for years. So it's, my father has to be deceased in order for something like that just to go through, It's like me when I was at the TRC campus, they didn't keep very good health conditions there. They didn't help a lot of people who needed it. So unfortunately for me at the time, I suffered an asthma attack. So that part was on them. There's a lot of evidence that pointed towards that. They were protected, so I couldn't sue. But lawsuits today for a lot of things, can no longer go through, especially now with the pandemic and the COVID situation. If you get sick or catch COVID at work, you can't sue your job. It doesn't matter if the job chooses to stay clean or not. You can't sue them because they're protected under the union law with this. So a lot of families that are suffering, right, with their loved ones who've been diagnosed, can't get the medical treatment or the fundings they need because of the jobs are not covering their employees. So death by health, death by accident at a job, death by medical products, it's hard to sue these days because these places, these people are protected too much, in my personal opinion. There's plenty of cases out there like that, but I thought I'd just bring this to people's attention. And for those that see this, if for those that have a loved one that's suffering because of stuff like this, and you're trying to sue and you can't figure out the reason why stuff won't go through, it's because these are the reason why these jobs, these medical fields, under certain circumstances, are very heavily protected by union laws. And in order for something to go through, if you have a loved one that, did unfortunately die at a job, or if you had a loved one that did die by health, by taking medication, and all of a sudden years later you ended up getting a lawsuit that went through because your loved one's deceased, it's sickening. It's like those commercials that you see during like late nights, where it's like, have you or one of your loved ones ever worked at a shipping yard, factory, docking plant, or taken one of our products and died from it? If so, please call this number. But what they don't tell you is them cases, those aren't new. Those are cases that are 15, 20 years old. So after 15 to 20 years later, then things want to go through because of this product, because it's been that long and so many of those cases come flooding in into the system. And then it causes people to start batting an eye and happen to, settle outside of court for pocket change. I told my doctor during the pandemic, you know, but I know what's wrong with my body. I know what my health issues are, and I can't get the help that I need. So I gotta make sure I take care of myself and get plenty of exercise because, one, you know, I go through, you know, I do have bad lungs. I was born with damaged lungs by being born as a level 1 crack baby, which means I have a hard time breathing at times. From that, I used to be completely obese once upon a time. So I have a bad heart because of that. I have damaged organs, damaged insides because of all that weight stacked on top throughout the years. I have very poor eyesight. You know, I'm blind in my right eye, and I got about 10, maybe 15 and a half years left in my left eye before I go completely blind. I'm type 2 diabetic, but I take the pills. That's it. You know, that's about it that I do for that. I'm also get high blood pressure because I have that as well. So, you know, I know what my body feels when it starts to act up. And I told my doctor, I told her everything because my doctor, you know, she doesn't do her job to try to help me because she's not from the US. But I told her, I'm like, look, man, if nothing can be done, just take me off of everything so I can just live peacefully and die peacefully rather than hurting and suffering day by day and hiding it. So even though they ran tests, it's like, oh, we can't find anything. That's bullshit. I know what my body's going through, you know, and I know what it feels. Especially me being on disability, I get turned down trying to get assisted help for living. And all that building up with everything, like put it this way, my doctor doesn't even have none of my medical history on file. She doesn't know that during times where I had to go to the walk-in clinic just to get emergency help at times. My doctor doesn't know about my previous asthma attacks where I had to be hospitalized. My doctor doesn't know that I was in the hospital decades ago, had to be hospitalized for a year in a plastic tent. She does not have none of my stuff on file. So, you know, the actual hospital where they do surgeries and stuff at, they got them on file. You know, if something were to happen to me health-wise where I die from my health, that's a whole lawsuit right there against my doctor, you know? That's a whole lawsuit, man. But, you know, I just thought I would bring this to you guys' attention because I know a lot of people right now are going through some shit now. And I want to let people know, look, man, you're not alone. And if you ever wonder why certain things don't fall through, these are the reasons why.